purpose of this video is to go over the problems from Friday's ungraded formative. I expected that these problems would be a little challenging, but people weren't very successful with them, so we'll just practice some more, but please go through this video and look at any of the explanations for problems that you missed. So problem number 1 was just finding the length of the hypotenuse, so I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem, and I need a pen that's skinnier than that. So it's going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 1/3, b is 4/5, and c is what we're going to figure out. So 1/3 squared is 1/9, 4/5 squared is 16/25, and that's going to equal c squared. So when I'm working with fractions, I need to have a common denominator. Because these don't have any common factors, I know that I'm actually just going to have to multiply them together to get my common denominator. So 25 times 9 is going to be 225. And then that makes this numerator 25. And this numerator is going to be 16 times 9, which is 50. 144. So c squared equals 169 over 225. And then I'm going to take the square root of everything. Square root of 169 is 13. The square root of 225 is 15. So c equals 13/15. On the next problem, we're working with decimals instead of fractions, but the Pythagorean theorem is still the same. So I've got a squared plus 3 squared equals 3.4 squared. So a squared plus 9 equals 11.56. And subtract 9 from both sides, so a squared equals 2.56. And I'm going to use a calculator to find the square root of 2.56, and it is 1.6, which I probably could have recognized. The square root of 256 was 16, and then I've just got a decimal difference there, but using a calculator is fine as well. So a equals 1.6. This next problem was asking you to find graph the remaining two sides. This graph actually is a little bit misleading because what they gave you in the problem was this line and said that this was one of the legs of a right triangle, and it told you that the hypotenuse had a length of square root of 74 units. So although you can see this yellowish line right here, that wasn't in the original problem. So all I know is that this one of my legs is this is 14 units, 14 little grid marks, but each of them is a half. So the length of this line is 7. And I missed that the first time I did this problem. So if you couldn't figure out what you were doing wrong on this, that is potentially what it was. So I've got 7 squared plus I don't know the other leg, b squared, and then my hypotenuse is the square root of 74 squared. So this is going to be 49 plus b squared equals 74. Because square root of 74 times square root of 74 is just 74. So I'm going to subtract 49 from both sides, subtract 49, and I get b squared equals 25. So I know the length of my other leg is 5. So again, if I had this, I know that my other leg has to be drawn at a right angle, and it's going to be 5 units long, which again, each of these is half a unit, and then I can draw in my hypotenuse to finish up that problem. This next problem asks me to classify things as right triangles or not right triangles, and it gives me the lengths of the sides. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to square each of them so that I have those numbers ready to go. So 14 times 14 is 196. I'm double checking it. So I'm just going to write 196 here. 50 times 50 is 2500. 48 times 48 is 2304. The next one, 1.6 times 1.6 is 2.56. Again, I'm just doing all of my calculations at once. 10.24, 3.4 is 11.56, 144, 676, 576, 144, 1225, and 37 squared is 1369. So I know that if it's a right triangle, then the smaller two numbers are going to add to the bigger number. So 196 plus 2304 does equal 2500. So I know that that's a right triangle. I can tell just by looking at this 2.56 plus 10.24, that's going to be not a right triangle. So that's going to be much more than 12. 144 plus 576, I'm looking at the 4 and the 6, and that can't equal 6. So I know that's not going to be a right triangle. And then I think this one's going to work. This is 1369, so this one is a right triangle. So I have two that are right triangles and two that are not. On the next problem, it's asking us for the possible lengths of the third side. So what that's telling me is that I've got a right triangle and two of the sides. It gives me two of the sides, but it doesn't tell me which two sides they are. So the square root of 40 is 6 point something. So I know that that is going to be one of the short sides. The 8 centimeters could be a short side, or it could be the hypotenuse. So let's just say it's here, it's the hypotenuse. This is going to have to be one of the legs, and I could be finding that side. So if that's true, I've got 40 squared, square root of 40 squared is 40, plus x squared equals 64. So I'm going to subtract 40 from both sides, and I get x squared equals 24. So x is going to be the square root of 24. So that's one possibility. The other possibility, and I'm going to erase here, the possibility is that this 8 isn't the hypotenuse, but it's this side. So I know that the square root of 40 has to be one of my legs because it's shorter than 8, but 8 could also be one of my legs. So in that case, I would have 8 squared is 64, plus square root of 40 squared is 40, and that's going to equal c squared. So c in that case is going to be the square root of 104. So that's my other possibility. The next problem is finding the distance between 2 points, and I can think about the distance formula in that form, or I can think about the Pythagorean theorem, either one. I'm going to go ahead and do the distance formula just to review that with you. So I know that the distance between 2 points is going to be the square root of the difference in the x's plus the difference in the y's, and each of those is squared. So this is like a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but then I'm going to take the square root of c, so that's why the square root symbol is here. So now I'm just going to find the differences in my x's from 2 to -6. I've changed 8 units, and I don't care if it's positive 8 units or negative 8 units, so this is going to be 8 squared. And then in my y's, I've changed from 8 to 2, which is 6 units. Again, I don't care if it's positive or negative. So I've got square root of 64 plus 36, which is the square root of 100, so d equals 10. For the next problem, it's asking me to find the length of the hypotenuse, and it tells me that the area is 20 square meters. So I'm going to label this as A and this is C. So I need to find C. I know that the area is going to be 5 times A times 1/2, because that's the area of a triangle, and it's telling me that that's 20. So this is going to allow me to find A. So 20 equals 5A times 1/2. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this 1/2. So I have 40 equals 5A, and then divide by 5. So A equals 8. Once I know that A equals 8, then I can find C. So 5 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. 25 plus 64 equals C squared. This is 89. So C equals the square root of 89. It says write your answer in simplest form, and it was looking for this square root of 89. I honestly think I would have interpreted simplest form as converting it to a decimal, because when I'm looking at a triangle, I don't want a square root of 89 as the length of one of the sides. So if you changed it to would be 9.4, that's fine. It would have marked it wrong, but I understand what you did. I think it would be probably good guidance if you're changing it to a decimal, it's going to tell you how to round it. So if it's not telling you how to round it, then you should probably leave it as a radical. So that might be a good clue. The next problem is asking us to find the surface area of a triangular prism. So I tried to sketch one here. A prism has a triangle at one end and at the other end, and it has rectangles as the body in between them. So it's telling me that it's an isosceles right triangle, which tells me that these two legs are the same. So isosceles means there's two sides that are equal. And then it tells me that the height is 8, and then this hypotenuse is the square root of 50. So the first thing I want to do is find the length of A. So I've got A squared plus A squared. This would be B squared, but they're the same thing, equals the square root of 50 squared. So I'm going to solve that equation, and I find that A equals 5. So once I know that A equals 5, I can start working on the surface area. So the surface area is going to be the area of the triangles. So 5 times 5 times 1/2, because it's a triangle, but times 2 because there's 2 of them. So that's going to end up just being 25. And then I need the surface area of the rectangles, and I'm going to have 3 of them. One of them is going to be 8 times the square root of 50. The next one is going to be 8 times 5. And then the final one, because it's an isosceles triangle, is also going to be 8 times 5. So when I have all of those areas together, I can add them up to find the surface area of the whole prism. So I've got 25 plus 80, which is 105, plus 8 times the square root of 50. And I'm going to use my calculator to find the square root of 50, which is not what I just got, which is 7.07 times 8 plus 105 equals 161.6. And that's going to be centimeters squared. So there are 2 more problems on this homework assignment, and I only have 30 seconds left on my video, so I'm going to do the last 2 problems on a second video.